Good afternoon, boys. It's Mr. Ebenezer here, and I thought I'd do my video message this week from a garden. That seems to be the thing to do. So it's not quite the rose garden, but it's the garden in Beaumont Avenue. So I hope you're doing okay. I hope your mums and dads are doing well as well. And as you know, every week I give you a message, and it centres on our three pillars of boys, the Christian faith and enterprise. And I always start off with giving some shout outs to boys who are kind of exhibiting those three pillars in how they are coping with lockdown. And I just want to mention this week Vaughan, who along with others from the School of Rock featured on ITV and BBC in the last couple of weeks. And their fundraiser supplied over 1 million PPEs to over 150 locations, so well done, Vaughan. And then I want to mention the Year 9 Spanish class, who have been doing some amazing cultural art project on Spain and South American painters. They were doing that last half term, so well done, gentlemen. Mr. Bericos is very, very pleased with you. And then finally, Zane, he's been helping his brother in Year 4 and his sister in Year 1 with their schoolwork. So not only has he been doing his own work, he's also been helping his younger brother and sister. So well done, Zane. Now, like I say, I spend every video message talking about the three pillars. I talk about a man, or a boy if you like, who I would like you to emulate, and then I link it to an enterprise skill and to the Christian ethos. And this week I'm going to talk about a man called John Newton, and he lived between 1725 and 1807, and he was, or he used to be, a slave trader. So you might think that's quite a strange person to say to emulate, but John Newton was a slave trader, and he's actually quite a nasty, horrible man. And he says of himself that he was a ruthless businessman and an unfeeling observer of the African people he traded. And on the boats, the slaves would often revolt, and Newton used to get guns and muskets on the deck and aim at the slaves' quarters, and he would lash the slaves, put them in thumb screws to keep them quiet. So that was John Newton, a slave trader, quite a horrible man who dealt in the slave trade, really a very unpleasant, nasty man. And once he was on a slave vessel that was heading for the West Indies, and he became very ill, and with a really violent fever. And he cried out to God for mercy. He said, "God, help me, help me." And after a while, he said that was a life-changing moment in his life. And after a while, he was deeply sorry for the way that he had treated the slaves, and he became a great preacher. And so he became a Christian. So here's this horrible, nasty man who kind of traded in slaves and was really cruel to the slaves. He became a Christian. And he cried out to God, he prayed to God, "Forgive me, I've been awful, I've been terrible, please forgive me." And then he went from being a slave trader to be a preacher, and he was such a popular preacher that the churches couldn't hold all the people who'd come to hear him. And he influenced a lot of people, and a lot of people at the time went to him for advice, and he helped them. And one of those is William Wilberforce, who we've named one of our school houses after. And Wilberforce went to see him because he was contemplating giving up politics to become a preacher. And Newton encouraged him to stay in Parliament. And this is what he said. He said, "Serve God where you are." And so Wilberforce took his advice and spent the rest of his life working towards the abolition of slavery. And in 1787, Newton wrote a tract, like a little pamphlet, supporting the campaign. And it was called Thoughts Upon the African Slave Trade, which was very influential. And it graphically described the horrors of the slave trade and the role that John Newton played in it. And he later joined William Wilberforce in the campaign for the abolition of the slave trade. And in February 1807, when the act to abolish the slave trade finally became law, John Newton, by now nearly blind and near death, rejoiced to hear the wonderful news. So John Newton, a slave trader, quite a horrible man really, and yet he became a Christian, and over time his life changed. And I want to use him as an example this week because he ended up being a great man, and had a great influence on people like William Wilberforce, and did a lot of good. But he started off as a really bad man, and actually, even after he became a Christian, there were times he didn't sort of change his ways straight away. And I want to use him as an example, really, because some of you boys listening in, and you do things you shouldn't do. And maybe you have been horrible and spiteful and unkind and unpleasant. You haven't got to carry on being like that. And John Newton, he was that kind of man, but he asked God to forgive him and God to change him, and God did. And he wrote a very famous hymn called Amazing Grace. Maybe you know that. It says, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me." It's one of the most famous hymns ever written. Well, John Newton wrote that hymn, and grace is undeserved kindness. And what makes a Christian isn't that they are better than anyone else, or that they are somehow superior or good. Quite the opposite. They realise actually they're bad. And I'm a Christian. The reason I'm a Christian for two reasons. Number one, I think it's true. I do think it's true. Number two, I've done things that I need to be forgiven. And I believe God is gracious. He doesn't treat people like they deserve to be treated, but he treats them kindly. But even if you think, well, I'm not interested in that, but even you, if you've behaved badly or you've not done the right thing till now, well, why not start now? And there might be times when you mess up. Well, don't give up and say, oh, there we are, it's me. Well, get back up off the ground and put things right and make a difference, because the enterprise skill is really problem solving, isn't it? It's a problem. And John Newton, he was a problem, and he was involved in something which is a problem, slave trading. It was a problem, and he worked to sort that problem out. So this week, the man I want to give you is John Newton, an awful man who became a Christian, and his life was changed. And instead of being a horrible, cruel, spiteful slave trader, he became a preacher who set about helping others to abolish the slave trade. And the skill then really is that problem solving, solving a problem. And that problem might be you, and you might have to think, right, I need to sort myself out. Or it might be that you see problems around you that you can sort those problems out. And I want to leave you with a verse in the Bible. It's in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8. It says, "By grace you have been saved." And I just want to get across to you today really about the Christian message, that Christianity isn't about being good and trying your best. It's actually about saying, you know, I'm not like that. I've messed up, and it's coming to God and asking him to be gracious to you. Listen, boys, I hope you're okay, and I'm looking forward hopefully to seeing some of you back in school really soon, and who knows, maybe we can try and get all of you back in before the summer holidays. Look after yourselves, give my best to your mums and dads, and I'll speak to you very soon. Come on over.